And good morning, everyone. We have a great program lined up with two special guests today. We're going to be talking about Corporations 101, and this is really just designed to be an introduction for veterans to corporate structure and resources out there. We are not here to make sure that you get MBAs today. That's not the intent. This is really a basic level introduction. We're going to have fun, hopefully learn some stuff along the way. I'd like to start with introductions, first with Bob and then Brenda. So over to you, Bob.
Hey, thanks, Pat. I'm Bob Whittle. I'm actually on active duty for 2 more weeks. I was the Deputy Commanding General at Army North, and I'm on terminal leave right now. And I've started my next job. I'm a Senior Vice President, and I'm the Chief of Staff at USAA, and really love it. I've been here for 5 weeks now, and so I've already seen the corporate structure here, and I'm excited to share with you all. And I'm available to all of you for anything you need at all, networking or anything you need. I'll give you my number here at the end of this.
Thanks, Bob. Brenda?
Hey, aloha, everybody. Brenda Cartier. I'm here in Hawaii. I'm visiting family for a while. I recently retired in November from the Air Force after 30 years. And most recently did 2 tours as the A3 or the Director of Operations for 2 major commands. One was Air Force Special Operations Command and the other was Air Education and Training Command. Really 2 terrific assignments. And then I'm a recent graduate this past March, a couple months ago, from NACD's Battlefield to Boardroom course and got a lot out of that. I am taking a self-imposed career break right now for a few months just to travel and spend time with family before I jump back in full time into my next professional endeavor. But definitely interested in what your experiences are. Thank you for everybody who served in the military. And we'll talk a little bit about what board membership looks like. And for those of you who are considering going on to board membership and the committees and everything, I'm here to tell you my experience learning. I'm very much a learner and am excited about the discussion today. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. And kudos to you for getting up for a 5 a.m. presentation in Hawaii. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm Patrick Huston. I am a technology lawyer in San Francisco. I'm on the FBI's AI task force. I'm on the Association of Corporate Councils cybersecurity board. I advise mostly startups and venture capital firms in the AI, cybersecurity, and defense industry areas. I am an Army veteran, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Here is our agenda for today. Bob is going to talk to us about military headquarters and corporate headquarters, basically compare the military headquarters to the C-suite for us. Brenda is going to talk to us about the board of directors, their roles and committees, and share some corporate research tools with us. This is a great little fireside chat with 2 fantastic experts. We'll go into a Q&A session, and when we're done there, we're going to go into small group breakout and networking sessions. That's the plan for the day. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
All right, Pat, thanks. Okay, so, and yeah, I just want to start out and realize that this audience is probably familiar with everything that I'm about to go over. So I don't want to sound in any way condescending, but I'll just share my perspective on all of this. And I know you all have perspectives as well. So just taking a look at the military headquarters that we typically have. And as you all know, this is really descended from how Napoleon first set up his staff. And you can almost see similarities to how any bureaucracy forms, right? And so right around Napoleon's time frame, we started to run into a situation where nations with the most efficient bureaucracy started to have a great edge in warfare. And then this is the evolution of how that bureaucracy broke down in the military side. Of course, you have a commander in charge, and then you have the line units, which are really getting the work done, and then a functional staff, the one typically being personnel, the 2, of course, intelligence, 3, operations, 4 for logistics, 5 for strategy, 6 comms, 7 can be about anything from what I've seen from training to other functional areas that get assigned there. And then the 8 is typically your money guy, or, as we call it, comptroller. And then, of course, you have some special staff where you lump others in, like the chaplain, and it works well. And you got a picture of the Pentagon there. A good analogy on the Pentagon is originally we built it in 18 months. And then when we tried to renovate it, it took 10 years. And that just tells you a little bit about bureaucracy and the difficulty of getting things done. Sometimes when you're leaner and meaner, it's easier. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So here we just have a typical corporate headquarters or C-suite. And frankly, it's not all that different when you look at how the staff is formed. And, the first thing I'll mention is that every company is different. And quite frankly, every company reorganizes frequently. So sometimes these boxes combine. Sometimes they split into smaller groups. Sometimes there's less direct reports or more to the chief executive officer. But let's just take a look here. So the third box from the left, right, there's your 1, the chief of human resources. And then the fourth box from the left is what we would call the 6, right, the chief information officer. The next one right there in the middle is your chief operating officer. A lot of times that might be almost a deputy or to the commander, or the 3. You got the chief finance officer, equivalent to the 8. General counsel, that's our special staff, SJA. Chief revenue officer, getting back to, more on the 8 side. Chief technology officer, again, towards the 6 side. And then over on the left, chief security officer, and then chief marketing officer, which would really, in a way, you could equate that to public affairs. So it's interesting how the bureaucracies aren't necessarily all that different, but they certainly behave differently. And so, Mike Dillinger's on this call. He's a assistant vice president here at USAA. And so he's seen this a lot more than I have. But what I can tell you is, just because you're on that line in the bureaucracy as one of the direct reports to the CEO, that does not necessarily make you as powerful as someone who might be 2 echelons down and is connected to 3 people who are direct reports and to the CEO. So a lot of things are done informally, and power is not evenly distributed in accordance with the diagram. And we see that in the military, but it's even more so here. And then finally, I'll just point out the most important boxes are actually the profit loss ones, right? And so, this shows an engineering, a manufacturing, and a sales division. These guys that are really working the profit loss piece are the most important people in the company. Those are your line companies. Thanks, Pat.
No, thank you, Bob. And I'll just add that what Bob has just laid out for us right here is a typical fully grown company. Think a public company that's on the Fortune 500 list. Of course, companies don't start out like this. They grow into this eventually. So I just want to briefly share with you sort of the path and the journey there. A company will start out as a single person. She'll have a great idea. She forms a company, or a couple of people coming out of college or grad school, founders. They build it over time. It starts out as a private company. And of course, most of us will start board journeys with private companies and not a public company. So it's important just to understand that distinction. Private companies will go through the funding processes normally. So a funding round, a seed round, and then Series A through D funding rounds, typically from starting around $5 million up to around $100 million worth of funding, before the option to either be acquired, which is one exit, or 2, to go public, which would take them down this route, or via an IPO. Just yesterday, I met with a startup that has 3 founders and 2 additional employees, a sales team. So the 3 founders are the CEO, the COO, and the Chief Technology Officer, the CTO. Grand total of 5 companies. It's only 5 employees. It's only a year old. On Monday, I was advising another company. They're 4 years old. They have about 50 employees, still a private company. They just went through their Series B funding round and got a $25 million investment. That shows you that the path and the journey, but this is kind of the end state that all companies hope to grow to at some point. Just wanted to put that perspective out there for varying companies that you're going to encounter along your board journey. With that, we'll hand it over to Brenda to talk a little bit about board structure.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm going to talk a little bit about board structure and functions, and then some of the common resources that you can go online and do some research into different boards or companies that you might be interested in. So the slide here has, generally speaking, what you would see for a board structure and function, or the functions of that board. The size of a board varies, but about half of the companies in the Russell 3000 Index have boards with about 8 to 10 directors. The average is just over 9. And of course, the board size can change. It could be smaller or larger depending on the complexity and the industry that you're working with. Director demographics, they tend to be slightly over a quarter women, and then the age, and then 3/4 male, and the average age of the director is about 62 years old. So anywhere between 56 and 70 is what you tend to see on boards. Boards on average meet about 8 times a year, but that can vary as well, especially in times of crisis. The recent banking crisis that you've seen in the news has certainly caused a lot more meetings to happen. I'll talk a little bit about some of the committees that the boards have and which ones get busy at different times. So the board committees, ultimately, the board members, if you're meeting 8 times a year, you need the ability to deep dive into certain capabilities or requirements of the board. And so the board then delegates some of these responsibilities into its committees, and they're better suited to provide a comprehensive review of the information. And then the committees propose recommendations to the entire board for consideration. So you can devote a lot more time and attention to important issues, hire outside advisors, and gain a more in-depth understanding of the company and the issues facing it. So generally, and this is generally, these can change, boards have 3 key committees. You see 4 here on the slide, but typically 3 key ones. It's pretty rare for boards to have more than 5 committees. The key committees are audit, compensation, nominating and governance. In this slide, we have risk, and risk committees can both exist as a standing committee or sometimes are overseen by the audit committee. Other committees that are common that you see would be finance, executive sustainability, or what we know as ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance, risk and technology. So let's talk a little bit about audit committee, which tends to be, generally speaking, one of the busier committees. It has oversight of the company's financial statements, related compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. This is a key component of any board, and certainly the audit committee is critical in making sure that this is done effectively. They establish the company's whistleblower process. They meet to review and discuss all major financial statements, and they discuss earnings, press release, and financial information given to analysts, ratings agencies, and disclosed to the public. So really key capability here. They also can discuss risk assessment and risk management policies, and certainly if there isn't a separate risk committee, they would be doing that within the audit committee. They report to the board of directors, and they can also provide oversight, excuse me, of risk to cybersecurity, data governance, and matters related to that, and then ethics and compliance programs. So really quite a busy and important committee. That's the audit committee. Under compensation committee, primarily roles and responsibilities are setting executive compensation. So both philosophy and procedures for how you're going to pay the C-suite executives of a company, developing those plans, and also, and importantly, planning CEO succession. So similarly to the military, where we develop leaders and we kind of have plans and developmental teams that look at who's going to succeed in command or who's going to succeed in key staff positions. It's important for companies to plan for CEO succession, and the compensation committee tends to be the committee that will do this. And again, they can have oversight of human capital management, corporate culture, workforce engagement, equity, employee turnover, and the like. So very human capital related, the compensation committee. The other key committee is nominating and governance. And this also is involved in succession planning, and they recruit and onboard new directors. They determine governance policies. So those include director election standards and vote requirements. What happens if the company is going to be taken over, both use of poison pills or defense mechanisms. And then they oversee the board, committee, and individual director evaluation process. So they have a key role in succession, like I said, succession, recruiting, and basically building out the board and making sure that we have governance there. So that's a quick hit on board structure and functions. If I could have the next slide, I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the resources if you're interested in a company or serving on a board for a company.
Brenda, can I jump in with just a couple of points about the board structure?
Of course.
Two things. The first is back to our military analogy. The board itself would be roughly considered like a higher headquarters. This is where the C-suite, the corporate headquarters, gets its strategic guidance. And so along those lines, the interesting piece about it is that there are some members of the C-suite itself can be serving on the board. Those are the inside directors. If they're both on the management and the board, sometimes you'll see a CEO who is also the chair of the board. And that's almost half of the companies out there, although the trend is going away from that direction. And then the other directors who are not on the committee are called outside or independent directors. Just wanted to make that point before we move on. I'm going to switch to your next slide for you and then hand it back off to you, Brenda.
Thanks, Patrick. So the next slide, it's not coming up yet for me, but I can talk to it. It's corporate research tools. And here we go. There are multiple corporate research tools. This is just a highlight of a handful that you can use. So you see the three headliners here: objective analysis, broad information, and subjective assessments. And this is important because depending on what you're looking for, these are the direction you want to go. Objective analysis. So this is really data driven. This is based on actual reports. This is based on SEC filings. This is based on data and factual representations of how a company is put together, operates, et cetera. So some of these are Bloomberg Intelligence. This is a great site, and the term intelligence is important here. They really go out and they provide all kinds of multimedia capabilities, whether it's webinars, documents, podcasts, different media, so that you can go and look at a company and find out about the company, but also about the business environment that a company is operating in. So if you have suppliers around the world, things can affect you, like war, supply chain, what's happening in Ukraine. There are a lot of issues that can apply to the company or the board that you're serving with. And Bloomberg Intelligence has some really great documents that just talk about the big picture environment, and then also drill down into the specifics of issues associated with what's going on locally and globally. Crunchbase and PitchBook, these are good references for like kind of quick hits. You can go deeper dive in some of these pages as well, but if you just want a quick hit of a company, its status, Patrick talked earlier about, is it private, is it public, what's its funding profile, and just an idea of the size and the overview of a company. Dun & Bradstreet is also a very, very deep dive, data-driven site that will give you a lot of information on particular corporations, and they also have credit ratings. They have really good references on risk on Dun & Bradstreet. And I mean, that's a huge site. You could go forever on their site. And they are monitoring just millions of like 240 million different points of data in the corporate world. And then, of course, SEC filings. That's the data that companies represent, what they're doing and why they're doing it. And you can go to that. For broad information, a company contacts you or you talk with somebody in your network about a company and you just want to know what it does. So obviously, company's website, Google it, LinkedIn, these are things we're all used to using for broad information. And then subjective assessments. So it's subjective because, for instance, Glassdoor or Career Bliss, you can go and you can tell them all the information you want about yourself or as little as you want. And then you can get access to what would salary ranges be for a job that you have or interested in, or even are sitting in right now in the location where you are, and kind of get some data about the working environment. Is it a good company to work for? What do their own employees say? What are the benefits packages? It's much more, those are much more tailored to what would your experience be if you were involved in a company. Now, just like some of the other apps that you might use, like Yelp to find restaurant reviews or something like that, these, people can post whatever they want. And so it'll be people's experiences that they had with the company. So you may see raving reviews. You also may see really damaging reviews, but you have to take that with a grain of salt because it's based on an individual or group's experience with that company. So that's why these are subjective assessments. Again, broad base research tools for you to use, but a good place to start.
Thank you, Brenda. I wanted to see whether anyone in the audience out there has any questions for Bob or Brenda. Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anything. So what I want to do is just say our next step will be go into breakout sessions. We're going to, I think, break out into 3. Bob, Brenda, and I will each be with one of the sessions when we're going to do a round robin of introductions for each person. And then I've got a couple of potential questions or topics for each group to discuss before we come back together. The first is whether you've seen any interesting or unusual board or corporate structures out there that you'd like to share, or alternatively, whether you've seen any useful research tools or sites that you want to share with the group. So with that, if we can break out into the small groups, please.